Danielle, Bridget.
Mark said no.
Jamie, and
Danielle
Mark.
Bridget.
And Steve's on vacation, I know that.
Oh, he is?
Yep.
No, I saw Steve today.
Is he? Is he leaving? I know they're going.
He was in City Hall today. Said he
Oh,
was
all
coming.
right.
Said he's coming?
I haven't seen Rick, so.
I seen Rick's
Yeah,
truck.
Steve's got something on City Council tonight, too.
Then he has no excuse. Okay, I will call the meeting of the Washington Historic Preservation Commission in order, please, and it is Monday, July 16th. If we can have roll call
Carolyn Witt,
here.
Steve Struberg, Brian Bogue, Rick Hopp, Danielle Grotwheel, Jamie Holtmeyer, Andrew Clary,
Here.
Bridget Kelch, Joe Holtmeyer,
Here?
Mark Hydridge, Susan Waterman. Here. Sal Maniaci,
Here.
John McCreary.
Is John still with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve.
Okay. Yay! My hero.
You've got one up there.
You're good.
We got a pledge.
Yeah, we're going to pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Steve? No.
Slim.
I guess we don't have any new business, so we can move right along, since we have,
Actually, while we're on it, because will be technically new business, I don't have it on here, but I know we talked about last time of doing a code amendment, and then we met, well, it was just a couple of us met last week to kind of talk about our options for that, and we decided, I think, what we're going to take a recommendation, if this commission's okay with it, to planning and zoning in August to make a minor amendment to the historic preservation ordinance. Let me pull it up real quick so you can see what we're changing. It's a small change, but I think it'll help us out a little bit.
thank you for coming. You're legal, I think, for.
All right. Does a TV?
No, oh, it doesn't. Oh, well,
It's good to.
So,
that's right. See,
whenever we redid the code, reorganized the code last March, we actually, historic preservation used to be in its own chapter, and now it's consolidated under the zoning ordinance. And so if someone doesn't comply with something in the historic preservation ordinance, we can now treat it as a zoning violation.
Good.
And so it's still mandatory review, voluntary compliance. I know we talked about getting some teeth in that, but I do think that would be an uphill battle. Sorry, hold on, let me pull this up. So, on this section 400.435, well, and the one before it, 430, right now in an exemption, it's a no certificate required if you're doing ordinary repair or maintenance, and it says to include painting. We are going to remove that to include painting so that if you're painting your building, it is considered a facade improvement and at least still has to come to historic preservation for the certificate of review. Again, it's mandatory review, voluntary compliance, but at least gets people in here, and we can then hand them that color palette that we have. That we,
Right,
yeah, the color
right.
swatches that we can then say, look, if you're trying to think of this theme, here are some shades that you can go. And then we'll leave the emergency repairs, interior remodeling, and then located outside the preservation area. Again, we won't touch that.
Right.
And then in the certificate review required, we already had this in there, exterior facade improvements on all structures located within the historic preservation design review area. We are going to add a sentence there that says to include the following but not limited to. And it'll be roofs, if you're replacing your roof, windows, awnings, painting, doors. I think that was the 5 that we included.
That's good.
Now, again, that'll be, it doesn't require a building permit, just like it does now. So I think it will be an education for the public. What's going to happen is people may not know. They're going to go in and say they're going to replace their windows, they're going to replace their roof, and if they're knowledgeable of the building code, they're going to know they don't need a building permit. But now that is considered part of the zoning code, the zoning administrator, myself, I can send a letter of violation even after the fact. So say you paint your building or you replace your roof without at least getting your certificate of review, we can send that letter of violation to bring them in and just let them know, here's the process, here's what you need to go on. And I think I understand it doesn't, there's no,
Punishment.
we can't, yeah, I mean, there's no punishment to that. They can't go back and
No.
take off the roof and do it.
But
But
at
I
least
think
it's
it
an
gets the word out.
education.
Yeah, it educates the area, educates the district, gets the word out. I think that's our best bet right now is to make that amendment. And if in the future we do want to try and get some type of permitting process for those facade improvements, we can go that route. But as of right now, we just kind of wanted to take the smaller steps, see if that education process kind of helps us out and gets people in the door for painting, for replacing awnings, that kind of thing. And we'll go from there. And that was the recommendation, that those two amendments, what we're going to take to P&Z in August.
Excellent.
So hopefully that would kind of take us in a step in the right direction without, I think, asking for too much.
No.
Sal, how do the signs come to us now? Is that through?
It is a different section of code. We do have our own sign ordinance. It's a different chapter, but it specifically says in there, and on the application, are you in a historic preservation design review area? If so, please attach separate application.
I know we see them a lot. I just didn't know how
Yeah.
they got directed.
No, it's that they are technically part of their own. They're their own chapter. The signs are, but it specifies it in there. So.
Our building inspectors are aware of all this changing in the code that we're gonna,
No, we have not, brought it up with them yet.
It has to be approved. so-
It doesn't, well, it does have to go to P&Z, and I haven't brought it up with John McCreary yet, but it won't change their review process at all, because it still doesn't, even though it doesn't require a building permit, they just have to submit the application to our office that Jamie would then put on this agenda. So say you're replacing your windows, McCreary, our building inspector, whoever it is in the future, doesn't have to look at it for structural integrity because the building code still doesn't require a building permit. But since our zoning code requires certificate of review, because it is a facade improvement, they have to at least get us a rendering for us to issue the certificate of
is there
review.
any way we can put all this in a packet, so when the building inspector says, oh, you're in a store, here's what you might wanna do, and give them a folder full of the application, the color code, the code change?
Yeah, it's a good idea. I know we have packets we hand out for common, like if you're doing interior remodels or decks or something. Do we have something for historic areas?
Right, but we don't necessarily know who's moving in right off the bat unless, let's say they bought the building and then went upstairs to get their water bill. They do get a packet for things around town. Maybe we can include a packet that they would give them upstairs.
I mean, we
Well, I
got,
think more, not for the tenant, but more for the building owner. I think we
yeah.
could do that.
I mean, we know all the addresses of all of downtown. If any of them addresses come up of a building,
Just like mail them out.
being sold,
Yeah.
then give them that packet. Right away, because if they're selling it, they're gonna do some kind of improvement.
And that's actually, Bridget's not here, but our economic vitality and our design committee are actually working on getting a mailing list out, correct, to
Yes.
people who are not fully utilizing their building. And I think we could utilize that mailing list then of downtown property owners. So,
Anything to help get the word out.
yeah, I know, I'm
They
hoping
might
that.
throw it in the trash.
Yeah, well, we have to do a public hearing on it at P&Z and at City Council, so I'm hoping it gets some traction in the paper.
Yes.
To let people know, look, we're not adding these architectural guidelines where we're telling you what you can and can't do with your property, but it says all exterior facade improvements, but we've never considered painting, roofing, windows as part of it when really they should be. And so we're just trying to let people know, hey, look, if you own a building downtown, you at least have to come in and get your certificate of review if you're doing any of those updates.
Right. That's good.
Just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
That's good. Okay, old business, International Shoe Factory. We got, you have yours, and we got this. This is our report.
Yes, Katie with Landmarks is here. Sorry, and she did hand out.
He zoned out there. He zoned out there.
Hi, I'm Katie with Landmarks. So I did phase 1 and now I'm on phase 2. You can see the map behind you, however, it was added onto. So the red section is phase 2, but it extends all the way over to State Street, and with a little bit of properties on James as well. And that was added after phase 1 because that section, along with the entire middle section, was sold for raising the funds for the shoe factory. I mean, majority of the land was sold by McLean, and then the Brinkers addition was added into that. So this section was 194 properties, individual survey properties, though there were 2 duplexes that I surveyed individually, but they're counted as one. And then within that, there are 5 vacant lots, 2 of which were former buildings were located. And the other 3, it's kind of uncertain. 2 for sure, I'm pretty sure, I don't think there were, just through research, and 1, I'm thinking there wasn't one, but it's kind of undetermined. But speaking of alterations and things like that, we had a couple buildings that were not determined because they were not surveyed in the 90s, so it was really hard to say what the original facade was like or what the original exterior siding was. So when we look at buildings, the main thing is the largest part that you see is siding. So that is your hugest, biggest chunk right there. You look at, then after that, like window alterations, plus doors, porch, and then roof. So if it was maybe like weatherboard before and went to vinyl, it's not as detrimental because sometimes it's the same profile, but when you're going to asbestos, shingles, to weatherboard, or to vinyl, it's a totally different feel. And then if you lost your weatherboard to vinyl and your windows, then you're losing everything. But so this section mainly built during the 20s to 40s, but with significant additions after that. In comparison to phase 1, there were more buildings built in the 50s and 60s. There's lots of ranches, but I mean, it's a vernacular area. You have a lot of shoe factory workers and just workers in general, so it's front gable, side gable, or you have a lot of bungalows as well. And so some of the recommendations after this, SHPO isn't too keen on individual nominations for the area since it's very vernacular, so they're not the highest representation of styles. But biggest emphasis is to just go on to phase 3 and to kind of round out where the survey boundary should be. I kind of have a preliminary boundary right now for phase 2, which would somewhat exclude everything past High Street because a lot of the buildings, majority of the buildings have been altered with vinyl and windows removed and replaced with vinyl. And so that's kind of a significant chunk on the western side that doesn't have as much contributing buildings within that area. And then just move further south to see what is remaining. But, some of the needs I'm looking for, if anyone knows anyone that lives in that area and maybe knows what original siding was, or knows anyone that worked at the shoe factory, just to kind of give some stories. I mean, I've talked to Mark a lot at the Historical Society. I'm going to be headed back there again to look at some photos. And if anyone knows of, there was a city garage on Rand that I found a couple newspaper articles on, but there's no definitive, like, what it is.
It was a big Quonset hut,
Yeah, I was going to say, it was a
Was it?
Quonset hut.
great big old Quonset hut.
Okay, it says that on the Sanborn map that it was metal and it was pretty large, on a very large lot that's now has 2 duplexes, 1990s duplexes.
Yeah. What did they call? They called it
City shed is what,
city shed,
called
the
city
city
garage.
shed.
city garage.
But it
and
never got garage. Garage was too.
It-
Yeah, but
It was-
never
Shed.
publicized as like a public parking garage, or I think it was.
No,
like a
no,
storage
It was
garage.
this work garage storage.
For Public Works?
equipment for
Yeah,
Public Works.
everybody water,
It
sewer,
went
everybody
from
used
the
it.
alley all the way almost about 10 feet from the last duplex going east.
Okay.
It went that far, and then behind that, it was dug out a little more, and it was
My time,
more
I
of
remember
a
that.
yard.
Okay, because I was wondering if it could have any association with shoe factory parking at all, but with the label of city garage and some of the articles I found, no, not so much.
Yeah.
But, and this area is primarily residential, as you probably know. There isn't really any individual businesses. There's one institution now that was formerly like Rao Construction. That's now the Montessori school. And then there was a beauty shop, but other than that.
Nothing else.
Primarily residential.
There was a tavern, wasn't there?
I
tavern?
think-
Second Street.
Yeah, Second Street,
No, that's in the phase one.
oh, that's in phase one,
Second
okay.
Street. There was a gas station, tavern, and grocery store. And then phase three, I think, has a grocery store just south of James on Rander High.
Yeah, yeah. Wow,
Yeah, I am.
you are. Are there any questions? That's a lot of work, and it's great. That's really exciting, and you know so much. I'm so impressed. That's,
So yeah, do you guys have any questions? Or?
we sure thank you.
Um,
And it's been, and I'm glad we're finally, I mean, there was a long stretch there before we got to commitment for phase three, so.
Yeah, and I got the grant agreement back last week. We did have to amend these boundaries a little bit here, because actually it was a little too small for the money we were asking for, so they said, let's just go ahead and I took everything out on Stafford, because they were,
Stafford and Fifth had already been surveyed.
right, but I guess it wasn't the complete survey that SHPO told me to put it back in. So I did, and we're asking for the same amount of money, so it doesn't make a difference to us. But we are submitting that out for bids in August, so keep a lookout.
You'll hear from us.
All right. All right, thanks.
We hope we hear from you. Thank you. Thank you so very much. That's really been a major investment in time. But it's so great because so much of this stuff gets lost if you don't make the effort to document it. It's exciting.
And I haven't heard an update on the actual shoe factory building itself. I think as I mentioned last month, we reached out to the owners to see if they'd be interested in getting it registered as on the National Register just by itself, not in a district, because that, I think, would help them, help with their case if they're trying to sell to a developer who wants to use tax credits. I was told they were in the due diligence period with a potential buyer, and that they didn't see a reason to go forward with that if they were already someone's already looking at purchasing it, which I agree, but I haven't heard if they've come to any decision on that yet.
I have half the building permits for those, so I have like exact dates for most of the building conditions.
All right.
That's good. That's good.
Well, good.
I bet. That's great. Okay, anything on?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a safe journey back. Anybody have anything on education? Since our curb appeal and creating new history people are not here, I need to get on them though, because now's a good time to take pictures. It's beautiful. Things are blooming. They haven't died yet from lack of water, but we need to hurry. We're getting close. We're getting close, yeah. And so hopefully if we can get them to, even if they just give me address and we can contact the owner and see if we can set up some pictures.
Aren't you one of them?
I don't know if we're a keen, I don't know,
I
yeah.
think so.
I think you
so.
are.
We kept trying to get him on this list and we haven't had any luck, but
Who?
you?
I already got it years ago.
You already got it? Years
Yeah.
ago? Okay. Well,
Years ago.
okay, so we'll not talk about that. Besides, we have a lot of other things to talk about, like number 5, the Jasper House. We had a very interesting council meeting. Downtown Washington, and I was here, though it was a downtown Washington push, because we came to remind the council, because we had heard, downtown Washington had heard that there was a demolition order out on the building. Well, so we felt it was timely to come to the city council and remind them that 2-3 years ago, when this first came up about the building, and downtown Washington had presented a program talking about what the potential was for that building and the history that was involved. Also, at that time, we had a serious person who was considering purchasing. I mean, there was serious money. And we were told that they would eventually get an evaluation, which is the wrong term, an assessment, no, that's not the.
Appraisal.
Appraisal. I know, thank you, gentlemen. Appraisal on the building, so then we would be able to have some idea of how much it was worth, and if someone was interested in buying it and developing it, there would be a amount. There was also a lot of concern that the city specifically had bought it for a purpose, and that they were not, there was just not, there was a lot of discussion pro and con, but that's where it was left. Well, as all of you know, it has been on our agenda for the last 3 years, every time we meet. And I would ask the council people, and they generally had very little to say because nothing was being done. And there was a specific council person who was somewhat not interested in pursuing it. And so while we kept bringing it up, it kept not going anywhere. So this was, when this business came up about the demolition, as mentioned, it was in a closed session. But despite the fact that it was in a closed session, 72 hours after a vote?
48, I think.
48 hours after a vote, it would have been made public. Also, it would be on our agenda,
Correct.
because to get a demolition permit, they have to come before us. So while this may have been a surprise to some of the city councilmen that we were aware of this and came to discuss it, we did. And thank heavens, Susan and Gretchen stepped up, because the general consensus, you were not here, so that's why you were, because I'm sure you would, I'm sure Joe would have stepped up too. But, because it's not like you weren't in the loop, you would have known.
I was in Utah, I would have liked to have been here.
You were excused, that was, but the idea was that, what we were getting from councilmen was, well, there was, we had been told that it was uninhabitable, it was not savable, and our response was, we didn't hear that. I mean, nothing came to us. I mean, what we had heard was, the last we'd heard was that this was going to go out to bid. And Susan stepped up, which we are all eternally grateful for, because we needed a voice. We needed somebody who wasn't just going to go, okay, well, so. And so between Susan and Gretchen, a motion was made, several motions were made, that, that they follow through and put it out for bid. And the general consensus from downtown Washington and myself representing you guys, I hope it was okay, was that if no one bid on it, there was no interest for development, nobody wanted to step up and do anything with the property, then we would realize that demolition was the thing that was going to happen. But we wanted to at least have the opportunity. There, as Gretchen has said, as Bridget has said, downtown development is hot. I mean, we got a lot going on. And living in downtown has become more than just cool. It's hot, so to speak. So the idea is that there is that potential. Susan called me and we talked about, apparently the downtown organization was interested in putting certain restrictions on this. So somebody couldn't buy it and then turn it into a parking lot. Or they couldn't buy it and sit on it just for speculation. And apparently there has been more discussion about that, so that
There's some things we can do and some things we can't do. And
exactly.
I think we're going to discuss that in later on.
Later.
But I think it's still, quote me if I'm wrong, Susan, that we're still going to give the opportunity to put it out for bid. We just got to decide on a price.
We
Have to
have a,
decide on a price, and my understanding, Sal might know more about this, is that we have to discuss what we can and can't
Put
follow
restrictions.
through with.
Right.
Yeah.
all right, we have a recommendation for executive session tonight on what type of bid restrictions, and we have sent those to Mark Piontek as well. So hopefully we got an area, because we were kind of concerned with, we put bid restrictions on it that are too restrictive to say, okay, yes, we want it completed in this many days, and
Yeah.
if it's not, then we have the option to buy back. The concern is that a developer wouldn't be able to get financing for it if there's that many risks. And so
Exactly.
I think we did find a good compromise there where someone, if they still wanted to develop it, could get financing, and so, but I think there are two items for executive session tonight. That should be one of them.
Well, and I know we are not in concrete about that. I mean, we, and I speak somewhat for downtown as well as for us, that we want to have some flexibility in whatever development could happen. Also, as I mentioned to Susan, and I mentioned today in a design and economic vitality meeting, I personally would hate to see it a non-producing parking lot. Even if we don't have an interest in saving the building, that could be a prime lot for infill, which we have lots of infill these days. You don't have to have as high-end infill as we've been having, but you could have an infill where it would be a tax generating, which I'm a firm believer. That's in the old library district. Anything I can see that generates tax money for the city is a good thing, versus a parking lot which sits there. So I would not be adverse if no one is interested in the building. I think that should be one of our options. That also we have a concern, we as downtown and I think as the Historic Preservation Commission, that the city doesn't put a $150,000 price tag on it that prices it to the point where nobody's going to step up. You may not want to do your $50,000, which was what the assessment was, but you don't want to price it out of the market. You're not going to get the money back that was spent when it was bought by the city, because they spent a lot of money on that property.
Yeah, it was tied to other properties as well.
Exactly, but it was very high-end. I mean, they spent a lot of money on that, and this is not the time to try and get that back, I feel. So if you would take those concerns tonight, I was trying to think if I, also,
We will.
was there anything else that we talked about that I forgot about that? I've
No,
got
I think you
something
did a
else,
good
but-
job of
I
covering all
had
of
a
it.
question. So the person that was interested back, 2
Yes.
3 years ago, that's the person that then went on to buy that property just down the block,
Yes,
correct?
Yes, correct. And she, at the time, also tried to bid on Elijah McLean's. I mean, she had money that she wanted to invest somewhere. And Elijah McLean's, she had funding, but it wasn't the 2.5 million, but it was a viable offer. But the owner was in Connecticut or wherever, and it just, it never went through. And then she turned towards this property. And when that went on and on, time had come, she had the opportunity to buy Buck Stanley's house, and so she moved on. So that particular person is no longer probably interested in that property, but that doesn't mean there aren't others that might be out there. And
We just got to do what we said, give an opportunity.
exactly, and I think that's all we're asking. We're not,
And that's what,
and we're grateful that you put it in that, open it up. So this is good. Is there anything else that I missed or that, but I was so grateful for the stepping up, and you would have if you'd been here. But the two ladies stepped up, and it was good, because held their feet to the fire, because that was something that, and the council is notorious, having been there, I can say this, for saying, well, that council said that, and councils change, which is true, but at the same time, you need to honor the history, that this was put forth, and okay, maybe you've changed your mind, but let's revisit this. So we're very grateful for that opportunity. Do you guys have any questions? Because you weren't necessarily,
No,
I didn't know anything about it.
well, they had sent there was an email sent out that, about the council meeting, because it was one of those things that as soon as we heard about it, we knew we had to do it immediately, or it would have been on the ground very shortly. So they kind of rallied the troops, and there was quite a few people from downtown Washington, and then there are people that overlap between downtown Washington and the Historic Preservation Commission. So anyway, so I think that's exciting, and I really appreciate it. You keep us in the loop and let us know. And if you need any support or any help from us, let us know. So, budget report.
Our third of fourth payment for landmarks was $6,000, all four $6,000. So we paid that on June 29th, and we owe them $6,000 more to complete the contract, so.
Very good.
And we normally won't get an invoice for that until they submit the final survey to, hard copy to us and then the digital copy to the state.
Right. And I very luckily, or very gratefully, received a check which will help pay for my registration and a tour and the hotel at the National Alliance of Historic Preservation Commissions, which starts Wednesday in Des Moines. So I leave tomorrow for that. And I'm really grateful because that allowed me to go to that, and hopefully I'll come back with some ideas. And
Wonderful.
and
That's fun.
it's always fun to go, and people are, I sat next to a lady from Santa Fe one time, and she was appalled the fact that we don't have mandatory compliance. Thought, yeah, well, this is reality. You gotta deal what you deal with. So anyway, I thank you, and that was out of the budget. I think we're not really doing anything much with historic buildings, the plaques.
Flags, yeah.
And the conferences, I just said I was going to that, which is exciting. And we don't have anything, I think, on the Calvin, but I do have something. I noticed, I've heard that there's going to be renovation of City Hall coming up in, was it next year, the 19th?
Well, we have, in the capital improvement budget was, I think, 500,000 for energy efficiency
Yes.
remodels.
Yes.
And I think just the smartest way is to do that as one of the first projects, because then it saves on energy costs. Right.
Immediately you start saving.
So that was that was going to be a priority of one of our first projects. Department heads are meeting tomorrow to talk about how those are on.
Well, we have something to put forward to you,
Okay.
because I'm sure in that will be included energy efficient windows. And we think,
I brought this up today.
that if you notice, a lot of the windows had been lowered and bricked in. We think the building should be returned to its historic, are you cringing?
facade.
I can see you cringing.
I'm thinking.
But, I mean, that is an opportunity.
I actually brought that up today already, so.
Really?
Well,
Well,
because
I
I knew
saw-
that was going to be a request that once,
That
because
you
we said
need-
we're replacing the windows, that I said that's going to be the one thing the commission's going to want.
They will hear.
It'll have to come before you guys anyway, and then when we were doing this code amendment draft, there is a whole section in there on municipal improvements being reviewed before this commission, and so I let Public Works know that today, and they are at our August meeting, we will be reviewing the Oak Street overlay, which really is sidewalks and the curbs, to make sure that they match, because I think in that area we want the vertical curb. There shouldn't be, normally it's to review pavers and that kind of thing, but there aren't any pavers on Oak. But
And there is a way to do the tall windows and not lose your ceiling height like it is now, like with Jesuit Hall is a good example.
Yes.
Of what they did is just put a facade around the inside and then just vented it up.
Right.
And so you still got the light, but you still maintain your ceiling without tearing out the whole
Yes.
place just to.
Well, and it would give us the opportunity to be a good example, because this is what we're pushing, the historic correctness of where it's doable. And if we could do this, this would be a very good thing for City Hall to support us in our request. Okay, and the other business I have, because as we're moving along, the Downtown Washington received a NAP grant, which is Neighborhood
Neighborhood Assistance Program.
Assistance Program. And what this is, you'll have to help me with this, but it's, you get tax credits that you sell, and then with the money you make from that, you have low-interest loans for facade improvements, which includes all those things you just talked about.
Right.
Roofs, windows, awnings, brick tuck pointing, all that sort of thing. So then if downtown makes these low-interest loans to help somebody do that, then as the money is repaid, that money can be spent in other ways, like.
yeah, downtown doesn't have to pay it back.
No,
Right,
we
yeah,
don't
they
have to
use
pay
the-
it back. And the design committee, we have awning grants, sign, facade things, lighting, and which is open to people it's a matching. Well, if we had more funding for that, we would be able to do more grants. Well, that money might funnel down into that and allow more of that to go on. Also, the tax credits are at 70%, correct?
Yes.
And this is the kind of thing that really people are interested in. In fact, I'm sitting next to someone who has bought those and used them.
It's a great program, yeah, and I think we'll have no problem selling them.
Right.
Well, how much did we get? Because you usually get a
Well,
block.
they asked for 500,000 and they ended up with
250.
250. But that is typical when you, yeah, with the government, if you, and like with your budget for the city, you always pad it because they're always going to tell you to cut it. So the idea is that when we requested this with a budget, there's a bunch of stuff that we can live without because what we really wanted was the 250 and we're very happy to get that. But you have to shoot high so that way you can. And I think we had applied for this like 6 times. We persevered. We wore them down.
Persistence, yeah.
Yes,
Bridget said she wasn't taking no for an answer, and she did.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this program, I mean, that's a great deal of funding. This could make a huge difference in the appearance of,
Usually, I mean, you find a lot
oh,
of
yeah.
50.
Yeah, oh, yeah, and the 70 is so much more easy to sell.
How soon do we have access to them now?
They're going to make an announcement the end of the week, I think, and then they're going to set up an account. We always
They'll be available in 2018, though.
Okay.
They'll be
This year.
available this year.
This year,
Yeah.
yes. And we're excited because this has such potential on how it can affect
And
so
then
much.
did we get any of the terms and conditions from the loans that we would have to make as far as the interest rate and duration?
There are some limitations, but I think there's a committee will be, well, actually, probably our committee that'll set up those and work with a bank, a local bank, to
Make it all happen.
make it all happen. Exactly. So we don't have all that yet.
No, and we try to move our things like that around too, so we work with all the banks, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So that way everybody gets an opportunity. And it's exciting, because this has a lot of potential, long-range potential. As you say, it's not something we have to pay back, and once we have that money out being used and it comes back, then we can put it out to other
I'm
things.
just worried they're not going to last very long.
That's true,
They won't.
because we were
Get 'em down.
talking, we were talking about, was Missouri Main Street?
Yeah.
They had 70%, and it was a 2-year program, and they sold them all the first year. There's nothing left.
All this might not make it out of this.
Exactly, exactly. And they, Bridget was saying that somebody had requested, and she called around to a bunch of people trying to find if anybody had any left. But they go.
Yeah.
So this is a really good thing. So that's exciting. Now, and is there any other business that maybe I missed?
The next meeting, we will have to move. There is a training in here, and I was just going to move this meeting upstairs so then we could go, but it's a sunshine law training, and I need to go to that anyway. So we will, unless you guys just don't want to meet in August and we can meet in September, or we can move it to another date. It's kind of up to you guys. A lot of boards don't meet in August
I
because
say
of the
we've
fair.
skipped August quite a few times.
Yeah, a lot of people
before.
with the fair and all that, if I have a motion about what you want to do, we can,
Just meet in September.
I make a motion, we skip August, and if there are any reviews that need to be done, that we just do them via email.
do by email.
Yeah, and that's why I was glad I got the recommendation to move forward with the code revision today, because now I don't have to worry about that.
Right, right.
So-
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes. So we will meet in September. It would be September,
17th.
right. And, Steve, old buddy, I'm going to be in England.
I got to commit to being on this committee for 5 more years, evidently, by next month.
Oh, my.
I just got an email this afternoon.
Oh,
My
dear.
time's up in August.
Oh, well, you've got to, do you have
I'm
anybody?
going to think about it,
Well, think about it, because
because I've been on here long.
I know, but you bring an insight when we have a code review or a review for a certification, that you just,
I know.
you see things nobody else sees.
I need to think about it. I got a lot going on.
I know.
In the same email, then they asked me to be on the Board of Appeals also, which I know that never meets. So that's why I'm ready for that one.
You like that one? Oh, my.
Skip that one, stay here.
Well,
Do you have like any new architects you're hiring that you can force to be on here?
I said I was going to give Kenny's name because he's always got an opinion.
You'd be great.
We can use that.
I'm gonna think about it.
It would be nice if we, because it's really great to have an architect, so, because you see things in a different light than the rest of us, and so we appreciate that. And even if you couldn't bring yourself, if you could find somebody,
And, yeah.
Find your replacement.
yeah. You can't leave unless you send somebody, no. And, it's never over an hour,
True,
so.
true.
You gotta be here tonight.
We
eh?
have such,
I know.
that's what I hear, but you have such wonderful cohorts in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes it great.
That's right, that's
I'm just
right,
feeling old because I've been here longer than anybody else up here.
that's true.
Not much longer than you though, Carolyn.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think you were on here and then got off and then came.
Well,
back,
I was,
didn't you?
I was here, I was the council representative.
That's-
And then,
that's
and then when I lost, they said, oh, we're gonna appoint you to that board, okay.
I didn't realize it was 5 years. I thought it was 3.
Usually 3 is the standard.
Yeah, did that get extended along the
They
way
said
somewhere?
I don't know when
5.
that happened, yeah, oh my.
Ready
I
for
was told
3.
3.
I say,
was
3
told-
with an option for 4.
I was told 3 back in 2003.
Yeah, I think 3, yeah. Here you are. Oh, jeez. Okay, if there's no other business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion.
Second? Excellent, we have a motion second. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming. And thank you. You're just meeting to death today. And so are you. You're a popular fellow.
Yeah.
What are you, what are
Amanda, hey.
nice that you're doing?
Did you get my voicemail?
Yes.
Okay, good. So,
I didn't know
yeah.
if you wanted me to call you.
It's just.
No, that's right. Yeah, I wasn't, I just, they said they wanted.
Yeah, because I was on planning, so I know about that.
Oh, okay.
Washington
But,
Young Masters. They wanted confirmation.
you're lucky. Hopefully you'll be on